Can you share anything about the alteration to our DNA and why it seems to be linked to the suffering that humans experience in this reality?
The alteration of the genetic material is not linked to the idea of suffering. It's linked to the idea of enhancing and increasing your ability to be more receptive antennas for higher frequency energies, which allow you to experience more kinds of effects, such as conscious awareness of other dimensions, telepathy, empathy, so on and so forth. The genetic alterations are not linked to the experiences of suffering. The genetic alterations allow you to transform the experiences of suffering into something less challenging, less difficult, less suffering.
Were there not alterations genetically that sort of suppressed certain aspects of our consciousness?
But you're talking about the original Anunnaki idea. Yeah. And in that context, yes, there may have been things that were not necessarily turned on, but many subsequent genetic alterations are allowing for the idea of those genetic markers to become active so that you can become more of your true selves in this transformational period.
How does that connect with the idea of the 12-strand DNA or those ideas?
The most you can actually physically encounter in your body or hold in your body are 3 strands, which is happening for many people in the creation of the 3rd strand. But the idea of 12 strands is simply an indication or an understanding, or perhaps even a misunderstanding, of the idea that you're connecting to higher frequency energies, which, if they could be physicalized, might represent additional strands of DNA, but they will never become physicalized beyond the 3rd strand because your bodies cannot physically handle the physicalization of more than 3 strands of DNA. But you are capable of connecting to the energy that might represent higher level strands, but they will remain non-physical connections.
So on the idea of the original hybridization that was created to create humans, and the idea that there were certain markers, would you say, that were suppressed in that original creation?
Yes.
And how that then relates to what's happening now and going forward. The idea is that the assistance we're receiving now is allowing us to activate more of our awareness of other dimensions.
Yes, more of the markers are being activated, which allows for ultimately the creation of the 3rd strand of DNA.
Because isn't the source of the suffering really about the idea of being disconnected from our higher energies and people creating belief systems that are not in alignment with their true selves?
That may be how it started, but again, that's no longer the case.
Okay.
You are no longer limited in that sense.
All right. But that is the healing that's happening now, right? By
Yes.
becoming connected with these other levels of our consciousness, we no longer have to experience ourselves as being a disconnected species.
Correct. And again, remember, it's not that you are actually disconnected. It's that you're becoming more aware of the connections you've always had. Just because there may have been a kind of suppression in the physical DNA doesn't mean that you've never had the ability to connect energetically. It's just a matter of the belief systems that were created through the suppression not necessarily making it available to your awareness that you could always have turned those markers on.
Which ETs contacted the Mayans, and can you tell what information did they share with the Mayans?
This is a misunderstanding. It's not that, even though there were other ET races that were in contact with the Maya civilization, it's not that there were basically the idea of extraterrestrials contacting the Maya. The Maya are the descendants of extraterrestrials. That particular humanoid species came to Earth, established colonies, built many of the structures that you understand that exist in those regions on your planet. But in that sense, it is the Maya themselves that built those things. It's just that the descendants now, while they have the memory of their connection to those ancient ancestors, those ancient extraterrestrial ancestors that came to Earth, it's simply that some of them chose to remain on Earth when the majority of the Maya left So the idea is that the Maya that exist today are the actual descendants of an extraterrestrial race. So it's not so much that the extraterrestrials came and visited the Maya and helped them with those structures. The Maya themselves, in their early form, actually built those structures because they are actually extraterrestrials who came to Earth.
And yet, didn't they express themselves as a more primitive civilization, in a sense, in terms of the structures they created? And, they all have that idea of, like, the pyramids in Tikal, this pyramidal structure that seemed to be prevalent throughout the planet.
Yes. The ones for the Maya were built by the Maya. It's just that, again, remember, after the majority of the Maya extraterrestrials left, which actually are called the Mayab, the idea of the remnants that stayed, the few that stayed, created the Maya civilization as you know it, but it also devolved because they were no longer experiencing the level of technology that the original Mayab had. And also because of different things that have gone on your planet, certain destructions, certain environmental issues, encounters with individuals that conquered the civilization, has allowed them to forget much of their ability that they originally had. But when those structures were originally created, they were created by the Maya when they were at their peak, before they left.
Did those ET civilizations practice human sacrifice or sacrifices and things like that, or that's all later development?
That's much later, in the devolution.
Okay. Can you shed some light on the intelligent civilizations that are in the Milky Way, in the sense that it seems like there are ET groups that are non-physical, some are semi-physical, some are densely physical like we are. Is, in terms of ratios of civilizations in our neighborhood, so to speak, is there any information you can share with us about how that proportionally is?
We have said we are not going to discuss it that way.
Oh, okay. So, but are most of the people that we're interacting with are either semi-physical like yourself or physical, yes?
No.
No.
Are, as we have already outlined in the monologue, a species that you refer to as the blue men,
yes,
which are, in terms of the ones visiting you, energy that can take some physical form, but they are not physical in and of themselves per se, although aspects of their society on their own planets are physical. The ones that are visiting you are the ones that have learned to turn themselves into energy and can take some physical form, but they are not the same as the physical component of their society, which remains on their home world and the colony worlds that they have created.
So in terms of like the Yael are physical.
Yes.
Yes.
But they are of a high vibration.
Serious consciousness is a non-physical.
Higher level serious consciousness is non-physical, but there are physical serious beings that are amphibious that have physically visited your world in the past.
So when we're interacting with the dolphins, is that in a way like interacting with an ET species that's intelligent and physical and also connected with other levels of physicality or non-physical?
Yes, but they're not ETs because they're not extraterrestrial, but they are, in a sense, an alien life form to you.
I mean, in a sense, aren't they the closest to interacting with a non-human species that is highly intelligent and would be kind of like a ET group?
Yes, this is why we have recommended that many people learn to communicate and interact with dolphins and whales, because it is one of the closest representations you have on your own planet of interacting with an alien society. It's good practice. It's good practice for interacting with other alien societies that truly are extraterrestrial.
So when dolphins are in the water and they're interacting with humans, and they have a wider range of understanding of what's going on in the water For example, if someone were in danger and the dolphins decided to surround that person to protect them.
Yes. This has often happened.
Yes. Yeah, I know, because I just recently experienced that. And I just was wondering how they can tell if is it through their sonar that they know what's going on at greater distances than we're able to?
It is through sonar and also telepathic vibrations. Remember that when you're in the water also, if you feel that you're in what you might perceive to be a dangerous situation, you're giving off a frequency that they can pick up and interpret.
It's actually quite extraordinary the way that they have such a far reach in terms of knowing what's going on in the water.
Well, remember that water is highly conductive, way more conductive of vibrational energy than air.
That's cool. The Sasani civilization seems to be quite balanced and happy. Can you say your culture has always been this way, or did they evolve after a certain point to reach the Sasani way of being?
We evolved, but again, remember, being a hybrid race, artificially created, and given certain advantages that you may not have had, we had a head start. So while we may have experienced certain challenges that have to do with negative energies, so on and so forth, yes, we did ultimately start out a little bit farther along the evolutionary path. Thus, at a certain point when we experienced what we call our Shakana transformation, we linked telepathically in a matter of 3 days, and from that point forward did not really experience the idea of disease or negativity in that sense in the same way to the same degree, and it allowed us to accelerate our evolution greatly at that point.
Well, lucky for us, huh?
If you say so.
And as far as like ET civilizations pumping, balancing energy into the planet through vortices, is this something just your civilization is doing, or there are others that are also participating in that?
There are several others participating in that. I am not, again, going to delineate them at this point because, again, we've already begun the phase over time of talking to you about your ET neighbors and who is involved with what and why and how. And so we will lay out those particular members of extraterrestrial civilizations according to the timing of our agenda in revealing your neighbors to you. But yes, there are many that are involved.
So how does that energy impact us when the effect, in a sense, on us as humans here on the planet?
It gives you a greater ability to make shifts in the direction that you prefer when you decide to tap into that energy by being more of yourselves and acting on your passion. It can only impact you if you match the vibrations, and it's easier for you to match those vibrations that are being given to you by following your passion and raising your own frequencies. You become more aware of the other vibrations that are there for you to access.